it's our last episode of the Wake Up Shot, a 6-part podcast series and a self-discovery journey into work life for the working adult, whether you're 20-something or 50-something. We hope you find something.
Or anywhere in between, right?
Yes. And yeah, so...
We just happen to be in the 50-something category.
At the end of it.
Yes, that's right, at the far end.
Okay, so last episode, I mean, we've talked about making the career switch, work-life harmony instead of balance, relationships, how that can affect your career and the impact it can have, a toxic relationship, for example. And we talked about whether you are a good fit with your career.
Yes.
Right? Is it a career made in hell?
That's right.
Or heaven?
That's right.
Okay, and now, last episode, what are we talking about?
I think we're going to revisit our topic from the first episode, which is a mid-career switch, because I think that this is something that Maddie and I both have had a lot of experience in and have a lot to talk about. And the first episode, Maddie got to ask me a lot of questions about my mid-career switch. So I thought it would be only fair if this episode, Maddie, if you could answer some questions about your mid-career switch.
Sure, ask away.
I think people are, at least the people who followed us on radio, should be quite aware that we're no longer on the radio, to say the least.
Yes. And it's been great.
It has been great. So that could be, I don't think either of our stories are a cautionary tale. I think we both got a lot of hope in our stories and a lot of things that can encourage you in your own story. And so I think what's most interesting about Maddie is that, like me, she's had a very sort of chaotic career. There's been a lot of ins and outs and ups and downs, and she's been all over the place, worked in different countries, worked in many different positions. When Maddie was a young girl, she worked in radio. I don't know how many of you know this. This was many years ago. And then she moved to TV. Spin, Army, Rise. And then Maddie went to India for a while. Then she went to Thailand. And then she worked in radio behind the scenes. And then while she was there, she actually started a real estate business. And then she came back to Singapore, got back on the radio, and we worked together, obviously, and we kicked some ass.
Found the dream team.
We had a great time for many years, 8 years. And then along the way, what was very interesting to watch, because I got a first row seat for this, is that as Maddie was working on the radio and doing very well, and doing other things like doing shows and doing hosting and stuff like that. But aside from all that, quite early in our time together on radio, Maddie started a whole other business in a whole other line, and that's the jewelry business. And I watched Maddie start it right from being just a tiny startup, working out of a bedroom with just 2 people. And that was what, 8 years ago or so? 7 years ago?
Next year will be 10.
Is it that long?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forget, a couple of years have passed.
We are that old.
Left. Yeah. And now it's a big business, and she's got
20 staff.
20 staff.
From 2 to 20.
Beautiful atelier shop.
Oh, don't use that word. It's so pretentious.
It's not even just a studio. It's a jewelry experience, right?
Experience center. Brand experience center.
A brand experience center. Of course, we're talking about Madly Gems. Is it Madly Gems or Madly Jewelry, or is it both?
Well, here's the thing. When you start a brand at the beginning and nobody knows you, you have to kind of state what your brand is about. The best example is Uber. Uber started out as Uber Cab. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
So when you become a brand that people know about, and that is the goal, then you drop the cab, because when you say Uber now, everybody knows what it's about. So actually, we're just called Madly.
Just Madly, and everybody knows what it's all about.
But for now, not everybody knows what it's about. So you have to say Madly Gems, because then they know, okay, it's about gems or jewelry. Yeah. But the goal is to get to a point where you can just say Madly anywhere in the world, and people know, okay, jewelry.
It's like Sting or Cher.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're so well known that you only need the one name.
That's right. So that's the goal.
So I think what's really interesting, Maddie, for people is that I think there's a lot of people out there who are working for a company and they dream of starting their own business. And it's like, where do you even start? And I think you have sort of a textbook case of how to do it properly, honestly. So my question to you is, how did it all start? And why did you do it? Why did you start Madly? Because you had a very successful career in radio, you were very happy with it, but you still felt a compulsion to do something else as well.
I think it's my personality. I've always had a lot of ideas, but my first love has and always is music. So it actually ties into quite a lot of the things we talk about. Like when we talked about, like, if you will like media, there are so many facets to media. It depends on which area of media suits you.
That's right.
So I like music, but I'm not a singer. I'm not going to be a lead singer in a band. I'm not an instrumentalist, so I'm not going to, I mean, I tried playing
I've heard you play the keyboard. What is that song you played? Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, I tried playing the piano. I'm not talented in that area as well. I tried playing the bass. I'm not talented in that area. Guitar, no, I can't play the instruments. So then, but I've always had the gift of the gap. So, and I'm loud. So radio was like the natural career choice for me.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you know, I like to laugh, I have opinions, and at school I was always like too loud, too opinionated, too this, too that. And I found my place on radio. So radio was my first job and my first love. I always knew that I wanted to be on radio. And when I got that job, I have to tell you that I really sucked at it. I was really, really bad.
You're talking about when you first entered radio when you were a young woman.
And I was 21. And I was with a lot of my radio heroes that really disappointed.
Never meet your heroes.
Never. As people, they were not the most
charitable.
To put it mildly, you know, but that's how I started, and I was in radio for a while. I then got the opportunity to go into acting. I'm like, hey, why not? And so I did that as well. Then I realized that's not really me. I hate having my hair tugged and pulled, and then, you know, having to do the mascara and the makeup, and then you have to memorize the script. That was just not me.
Well, you're having to say somebody else's words.
Not only that, I am spontaneous by nature, so I like to wing things. And
you don't want to do the homework.
And being on TV, like, you can't wing it.
I don't know if you can tell from this show, but neither of us do any homework. We're just winging it. But I think that's our strength.
That has always been our strength. And as time went by, I realized that I am truly a people person. There are a lot of people who say I'm a people person, but they don't like people. And like, thankfully for you, you never say you're a people person. You're very good with people.
I'm an anti-people person.
But you're very good with people, but you will never say that. I know of people who would just say, I'm a people person, but they're
no good around people.
Or not only that, they don't like people. They don't have a heart to serve.
I'll just tell you, I don't like people, but I love all of you.
But I've always loved people. I see the best
in all their flaws, warts and all. That's the great thing about Maddie, is she loves people, warts and all.
Until you really prove yourself to be an unlikable person, not worth giving a benefit of the doubt.
I've seen Maddie have feuds with people and then the next day be fine with them. As long, you know, I feel like you're very accommodating in terms of people. If people are willing to turn the other cheek or to make amends, you're more than willing to forgive whatever might have happened and move on. And I think that's being a real people person.
So I think I've always looked for, and I also like art. So I like a lot of things, and I think most of us are that way, and when you're young, you're able to explore that, right? So like we talked about in this podcast, is you put yourself out there first. I was very fortunate that my first job was my first love. So that was great. Put myself out there, and then I realized I wasn't very good at it. But that's because back then I wasn't the person that I would become.
Well, you were still very young.
Very young. I had a very unpolished sense of humor. I wasn't very self-aware. I didn't know enough about people or things, or have enough life experiences to form a well-rounded opinion. And when you're young, it's always about yourself, because you need to prove yourself to the world. So it's always about me, I. But a really good DJ is about you. It's about the people listening in. It's about, you know, what matters to them, the questions that they are asking, what they relate to. And you get, like fine wine, you become better with age when it comes to certain jobs. I think with any job, you just become better, but you have to start somewhere. And so, you know, I tried different things. And when I was very disappointed in the radio culture, the media culture, I would say, I thought, yeah, maybe, I'll try behind the scenes. So I went to work overseas in radio, setting up radio stations as a software consultant behind the scenes, because I thought, you know what, I don't have to deal with media people. And it was great. Like, the people were really amazing. I really enjoyed working with, the software people behind the scenes. But then I realized that that wasn't really me as well. So when I had the opportunity to go back into the front line, I'm like, I'll take it. But by then, I already understood the entire business very, very well. So I went to work I've always wanted to travel. So again, it was one of those things where I kind of mushed together everything that I love doing that's part of my personality. So another dream job of mine when I was growing up was to travel. So I wanted to be an air stewardess, but everybody told me, you're too short, you'll never make it. So I thought, yeah, it's right. I can't really reach the cabin, so I'm not gonna make a very good air stewardess, and no airline would take me. So then I thought, okay, but I still want to travel for my work, and I use radio to do that. So that's why I became a software radio consultant. And then I went to India to set up radio stations. And then I found my way to Thailand, and that's where I got my job in Virgin Radio. And then came back to radio while traveling.
It's so amazing that you did all this on your own. Like, you moved to these different countries on your own. I think that's very admirable and very brave, frankly.
But you have to put yourself out there first. So once I put myself out there, maybe it's not everything that I dreamt about or loved, but then I managed to meet people who say, oh, maybe you would like to try this. I'm like, yeah, I'm game for it. I was in my 20s. I was game to try anything that had an aspect of what I love, whether it's travel, whether it's music, whether it's people. So each job didn't have all of it, but it had one or the other.
Elements of it.
There was elements of it, which was good enough for me. And so I tried it all. I probably never stayed in a job for more than 2 years, but in your 20s, I think it's okay. It suits my personality type,
For sure.
I relish change and a challenge. And so that's what I did. And then that brought me to Thailand, where I eventually met my husband, who is very different from me. He engages a different part of his brain than I do. So I come up with a lot of ideas, and he has the game plan. And that's the thing about ideas. It takes the right people to bring it to life. An idea in itself, no matter how good, is not good enough because it won't come to life without the right people and also the right situation and circumstances to bring it to life. And you need all those things to come together for it to blossom.
Wes is very organized. He's a very organized person.
And he's very hands-on. He's very good
at things done.
Yes. So, with him, we managed to start businesses, like a real estate business. But here's the thing, is sometimes bad things happen or things don't go your way for a very, very good reason, and you need to be okay with it. So I never thought of starting my own business because I was very happy working for someone, getting a paycheck. And I knew that I could climb the corporate ladder and I could do pretty well. I was very ambitious. But then I remembered having my second child in Thailand. I didn't have an expat package. So when I had my second child, and both my kids had to be put to an international school because they didn't speak the local language, and it was becoming really heavy on our expenses. So therefore I went to my boss and said, can you pay me more? I need an expat package or a better package for me to stay in Thailand raising 2 kids. And they said they couldn't do that. And because they couldn't do that, I had to look for other ways of making money to raise my family. And that was when I started looking outside of a paid gig.
You started looking into entrepreneurship, into doing your own thing.
Because I didn't feel that I had a choice, So it was not a good situation. I didn't get what I want. But thank God I didn't. And now when I look back at it, if they had said, okay, I'll give you the package that you wanted, I'm telling you I won't be here today.
Well, this is the way, generally speaking, corporations sort of keep you in line, is by, they'll give you a promotion, they'll increase your pay. So as the years go by, you might be getting sicker and sicker of your job, but the money gets better and better, the position gets higher and higher. And that's how people become sort of corporate slaves,
Yeah, they stay in their job, right? But sometimes, and actually just as often, you don't get what you want. You don't, your boss says no to you.
But that can be a great thing.
That can be a great thing. So because of that, I had to look outside of it, and we were staying in a rather rundown compound, housing estate. They call it Muban in Thailand. And there were a lot of empty houses that were up for rent, but were not rented out. So I made a comment to my husband saying, the prices are really cheap. These are nice houses. Why are they empty? And he said, why don't you just go take some nice photos, call the landlords and ask them if they give you a commission. That could be your extra income. I'm like, really?
That's amazing.
Ask them for a commission? I don't know how. He says, just call them in your broken tie and ask. And so I did. And I was amazed when every single one said, sure, if you can find a tenant for my house, I'll give you a month's commission. And that's how I started. So I would do that after work and on weekends, working 14 hours, sometimes even 18 hours a day. After my job, I would take clients around looking at houses, and I managed to rent a few. And that's how I started my real estate business to a point when it was a viable business for me to leave my full-time job at Virgin Radio to focus full-time on my business.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because it really is as easy as that in some ways. Like sometimes life is just about taking action and just doing something. Like it's very easy not to do anything sometimes. But complain. But sometimes out of necessity, we're forced to look at other options, to find other things that we can do. And I feel like this is just such a perfect example of that.
Because sometimes when you don't get what you want, you start looking, right? Like, all right, I didn't get what I want. Instead of getting really angry, because I didn't blame my bosses. I
if they don't have the money, they don't have the money.
They don't have the money, or, for my position, it's like everybody's getting paid the same. Like, why should I pay you more than everyone else? It's not fair. Which is a valid reason. You got to be reasonable. You should be able to be rationalized with, and therefore led to good things because you're not bitter about anything. You understand the situation, but then you have to problem solve your own problem.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to find a way out of your own predicament.
That's right.
And then you have to grab the opportunities that come your way. So then I went into my own business. I ran my real estate business for like 2 years, and we did extremely well. No cash flow from month to month. Honestly, if we didn't have clients and the money didn't come in, like my kids will be out of school and we'll be out of the house. It was like that for 2 years. And I cannot tell you how stressful that was. It was incredibly stressful, as successful as we were. And after that, when we came back to Singapore, to cut a long story short, we decided to come back to Singapore to raise the kids and give them a good education so that we can put them back into the Singapore school system. Because there are merits to it. There's a lot of things wrong with it, but there's a lot of great things about it as well.
For sure.
And I can say that I can attest to that having put my kids through school overseas. And when we came back, I was so glad to just find a full-time job in a company that would pay me so that I didn't have to worry about payroll. I mean, it was bliss. It's like taking a break, a vacation from running your own business. And that was great too. And I think that's the thing about running your own business. I see a lot of young people thinking, you know what, I want to run my own business because therefore I get to do whatever I want, and nobody can tell me what to do, and I don't have a boss breathing down my neck. But here's the thing, I think there's pros and cons to both situations, and I think you need to be able to see the good in just getting a regular paycheck and working for a big corporation, a good corporation under good bosses, which I did have. I had good bosses and bad bosses, both. But then again, how do you know the good when you have never experienced the bad? You have to embrace it all and then learn from it, right?
That's right.
So then when I came back, I tried real estate for a while, and I'm like, oh no, I really don't like the environment, the culture. It was horrible. So then I was offered a job on radio 91.3, and that was where I met our mentor, Jamie, who offered me a job. And then I went back into radio in Singapore, not knowing where it would lead, because at that point I thought it was just like a part-time gig. I started part-time. And one thing led to another. When a vacancy came up, he thought, oh, would you take on a more high-profile shift? And I can tell you that I put a lot of thought into it. It wasn't just like, ooh, I want to be famous and okay, put me on a high-profile shift. I actually never thought about it because I thought my radio days were over. I just wanted a regular job.
what happened is you were working on 91.3, and then the company wanted to start another station, and they kind of built the personality of the station around you in a way.
It was not intentional.
But I saw it happen. I mean, they were even asking Maddie how she felt about the interior decor of the studio, and they were setting everything up so that Maddie would be happy with it. And I feel like even the personality of the station itself was sort of an extension of your personality. It was a station at the time, it was more of a female-oriented station, and I feel like a lot of your sensibility came through in the whole station.
Only because I was the target. Like they were appealing to a certain demographic, and I fit right into it.
Yeah.
So, it made sense.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
But I would say definitely when we started it, Jamie and myself, we were the heart and soul of it. And I think that's really important in anything that you do, whether it's a product or a business or a company or an idea. You take, that's why, you have a lot of companies where when you take the founder out of it, there's no heart, there's no soul anymore.
There's a certain magic when the founders grow the company and then run the company, and then there comes that inevitable stage where the company is bought over by a larger corporation, and then the founder doesn't fit in with that new system and then leaves, and then whatever product or service, or they're fired, and then whatever product or service they're offering, you can see it becomes more mediocre.
Unless you manage to replace it with people who also have a heart for the company. For example, Apple, Steve Jobs was the soul of it, but I think Tim Cook is doing a great job.
Well, I mean,
it's debatable, all these things, but from what I see.
From a shareholder perspective, it's not debatable because the company is worth a lot more now than it was. But you could say from a customer's perspective, since they came out with the iPhone, what new innovation has there really been? What new product? I mean, they offer a lot of services. I mean, they've got their streaming service and this and that. But where's the magical product? But the thing is, once you've done the iPhone, I don't know what there is to do beyond that. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, I mean, they're still innovating. I mean, to me, I think Apple is still a great company, but there are still people in there with a heart for it, and I think that's important. As long as
it's a company that people love, and I think the new people they bring in also love it. And I think Tim Cook, there's still a lot of love for Apple.
But start somewhere, It's like the seed has to be planted. And then watered by, I guess, the right nutrients.
But I feel like more often than not, the story is that once the founder leaves, something is lost. So anyway, back to your story. Okay, so you start KISS, and then I joined you, Arnold joined you, we had a great time. You're doing very well. The show just takes off like, nobody could quite believe what was happening. We just started doing so well. As it was growing and as it was thriving, Maddie had this idea to start. And we were very busy and we had a lot of stuff to do. There was a lot of moving parts to this whole thing. But amidst all that chaos, you still said, you know what, I still want to start my own thing, a separate thing. What was the impetus for doing that?
I wasn't actively looking for, like I said, I'm an ideas person. So I love colors. I love bright, shiny things. Who doesn't? And to be honest, I could have gone into anything with color. I could have gone into makeup. Honestly, I loved it just as much. I could have gone into fabric, really bright, colorful fabric. I love that too.
Could have gone into parrots.
What's that?
Parrots. They're so colorful.
I'm not that
You could have started a parrot business.
Maybe not animals so much, but
toucans,
you get the idea. Like,
yeah.
I love colors. Yeah. Anything to do with colors, I would have gone into it, I think. So then the serendipity comes into play.
You like shiny things.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, yeah.
And therefore meeting the right people, you know, so I did meet a jewelry designer who needed help in the marketing area, and that's how we started. And for me, I just saw it as an interest, a passion, something I wanted to do. I never had any dreams of making it into a big business. Yeah, that was like employing people, having a shop space. I can honestly tell you, never crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind. So it was one of those things that I do believe that the best businesses grow organically. Yes. You know, and it takes on a life of its own, and that's why I call it a calling.
I was going to say the main ingredient, just going by what you're talking about was a passion. And I feel like sometimes people will start businesses for very mercenary reasons. Like you'll see a lot of these people on YouTube giving you advice on how to start these businesses that really, I don't think they really care about it. They just see it as a means to an end. They just want to make money. I feel like that's if you just love money, I guess that's the thing you want to do. But if your business, if your idea is driven by a real love and passion for what you're doing, I feel like that organic growth is something that can follow quite naturally. Like if you love something and you're willing to put a lot of work into it, put a lot of yourself into it, it will, there's a higher chance that it will end up growing. And I feel like that's what happened to Madly, is you really genuinely loved it. And then you get one client, then you get another client, then you get more clients. And the thing is, people can sense your excitement over it. They can sense that you really believe in it and that you really love it.
And that's true. I think in the early days, we had a lot of clients who said, oh, I just love your passion.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm buying it. They didn't come to me because, oh, you're on radio.
Yeah.
We produce a good product.
Yeah.
We had great quality products that showed. But at the same time, it was the passion that really got people. And I think it's the same for any business that you're doing or you're starting up.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another while I was still doing, and that's why I held on to my radio job for so long, because I loved them both.
Yeah.
And one took on a form that I didn't expect, and it just continued to grow to the point that I had to make a decision. I knew that decision was coming at some point.
Yeah.
But I told myself that I would keep on doing my current job because I loved it. I really loved working with you guys. Yeah, we had our ups and downs, but overall, I love the people.
Well, we lasted many, many years.
Yeah.
Like most shows, I mean, I think history will prove that most shows do not last 8 years. And we lasted a long time.
Long enough.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a good run for any creative endeavor. You look at most of the TV shows you love, after about 7 seasons, they start to go downhill quite quickly. Most shows only last 6, 7, 8 years,
But here's the thing, you also don't want to outlast your welcome.
Yes.
And I think it's also great to know when to bow out.
100%.
And we did in a great way. And
the way I look at it, Maddie, if we're sick of ourselves, just imagine how sick everybody else is.
Because when you work with a team, right, it is like a marriage.
Yes.
It is a marriage of sort. You are choosing your partners that you go into bed with.
Yeah.
And
never happened.
And some last a long time and some don't.
Yeah.
And again, you take away the good, hopefully, and leave behind the bad. Just leave it in the past and take with you the good and grow to be better. Better people, better company, better employer.
But Maddie, also like for people out there who maybe like people could be on opposite sides of the spectrum. Like part of your story is like there might be people running their own business thinking, oh, maybe I want to get back into corporate life, and part of your life, that's what it was about. And then there are people in corporate life who are thinking, actually, I want to start my own business. And you've sort of been on both sides of that equation. So I think that the interesting thing is like, when you were doing both jobs, and both jobs, like the funny thing is the success of the radio side also coincided with the success of the Madly side, and they were both sort of growing together and getting more intense together. And the thing is also though, it also takes like a psychological toll. Like it's not for everyone and it's not easy, right? It was like a difficult task to keep up with everything, and you paid a certain price for it too, right?
I did. I think my family probably paid the highest price. As you would know, because you go absolutely mental when you are not well rested. And it's so important to be rested, to get enough sleep,
just to get time off.
Have enough me time. And me time, I need to stress, me time is not family time. That's family time. So you have work time, and then you have family time, and then you have me time. And me time is really just doing things. Okay, if you're not an alone person, I'm not an alone person. But for me time is going out with my girlfriends. Sometimes, taking a girly trip, or even just a meal.
Watching Netflix.
Or even just a meal.
Just a meal.
Watching Netflix. A facial. That is me time. Not taking the kids to the park. That is.
That's them time.
Exactly.
That's a sacrifice.
That's pretty. That's pretty stressful too. So it did take its toll, and that's why I realized that at some point, I had to choose. I need to only have one job so that I would have some time for my family and not go absolutely mental every time.
For the sake of your mental health. Like just for some context, like we did the shift from 6 till 10, which means you're waking up at like 4:30. You're never rested. Like the way I describe it is like we were in a state of basically like near total exhaustion and breakdown for 8 years because it's such an unnatural, weird schedule and nobody else understands it. And when you're done, you've been talking to people for 4 hours. All you want to do is go home and have a nap, and you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't want to see anybody, you don't want to do anything. It's very, like, I hate to complain about, you know, being a DJ, but that aspect of it was really tough, and it's really hard for your biological clock to adjust. So we were basically tired for like 8 years, and when you're tired, you're not particularly rational. And if you're me and Maddie, then you're not rational really to begin with.
Like Jason, you remember how tired you were like at the beginning, where you would literally in between songs, you would literally just fall asleep, and then we're like, Jason, get up, high energy, come on, dude.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I was at my best when I was at my most illogical. Like sometimes I just lost all touch with reality, and I feel like then I could put together some of the best ideas that we
when you didn't make sense.
When I didn't make sense,
and everybody loved it.
That was kind of people like my talent was sounding drunk even when I'm not drunk. You know?
You did it so well.
But it was just the exhaustion.
But I think that was where I learned a lot as well about managing a team. Like here's the thing, everything is a journey. Right, life is a journey, your career is a journey. And one thing leads to another. Until you manage a duo, you can't manage a trio. Until you manage a trio, you probably can't manage a team. You manage a team, then you manage a department. And department, then a company. But if you, it doesn't always happen that way, of course. But if you can, that would be great. So again, do not belittle where you are and what you're doing right now, because whatever that you're learning right now, whatever the experience you're going through, it will be valuable if you allow it to be. It will help you in your next step if you let it. But if you're there always complaining, not being aware, not being present, not learning, not having fun, you'll just be miserable. And when you leave it for the next job, you take nothing with you except bitterness, anger, self-righteousness, and it's not going to serve you well. And down the road, you just become an angrier, less nice person.
I mean, it's so easy for that sort of thing to happen. I think what's important for people to know is that being involved in the working world in whatever capacity you're involved in it, there will always be politics, there will always be personality clashes, there will always be an asshole boss that you don't respond to. The thing is, you're not alone. Absolutely everybody goes through these things. It's inevitable because people are people, and people are both good and bad. And not, I think sometimes people get a victim mentality where they make themselves the center of the story, where it's like, poor, woe is me, everybody's against me, or the whole world's against me, or this guy's so mean to me. But you also have agency in yourself to rise above that. And just remember, you might be somebody else's nemesis and you don't even know about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all of this stuff goes both ways. And so you can't be made bitter by your experiences in these companies. As long as you're getting paid, you're getting something. Look at it that, I'm just here to suck as much money as I can out of this company. And it's like, but you do that, right? And then if it's not a good fit for you, you think, okay, I'm going to take from this company and I'm going to take these resources, whatever resources I'm making, and try to come up with either, if you're happy with your job, fine, just stay there. If not, what can I do to either take a course, start a business, try to develop new skills to try to get somewhere else. So if I'm in a situation that I don't like, I can get in a different situation. Sometimes it's not even about being in a better situation, it's just about being in a different situation.
Yes.
Like sometimes just a change of scenery can make all the difference in the world.
And gives you new perspective, and perspective is everything.
Yes.
Because often when you're lost in your own emotions or a situation and you're stuck in a rut, you actually can't see or think clearly anymore. And sometimes you just need to get out of it to see or get a clearer picture or to get an overview of the situation for you to do something about it. And that's really important. I like how you say about how you could be somebody's nemesis.
Yeah. You might not even know it.
And you might not know it, yeah. But then again, you could be somebody else's best friend. So another thing also is when somebody tells you things like, oh, you know, this boss is horrible, or she's a real bitch, or he's a real asshole. You know, I have this approach. She can be a real asshole to you, but a best friend to me.
Yeah.
And I remember, do you remember this conversation that you and Arnold both had?
Yeah.
And I remember this situation because I think I was going off at someone who was giving the team a hard time.
Yeah.
And then you said, Maddie's a real asshole. She can be a real asshole. No, Arnold said that, like, you know, Maddie can really be an asshole. Like, we see, like, she's quite nice to us, but she can be a real asshole. And then you said, but she's our asshole. And everybody needs an asshole in their corner. Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, I mean, that was sort of a constant theme of our, you know, relationship on air, is that, like, your best friend might be somebody else's worst enemy. Yeah. And that's okay. And, like, I can think of somebody specifically who is another on-air personality. I won't name any names, but I had the best relationship with this person. You'll know who it is.
Okay.
But one of my favorite people on air. We always had the best time. We would just go out together, have lunches. We never had any problems at all. And then I started hearing from other people that talking about this person in the most negative way, and I'm like, that's not the person I know. And I'm like, I don't think people change that much. What happens is that somebody might show this aspect of their personality to you in this context. In a different context, they might show another aspect of their personality to this other person. So what I think it's important to remember is just that, you know, just because somebody else doesn't like that person doesn't mean that you also don't have to like that person.
Exactly.
That can be your ally.
Like a boss, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I think there are many people who, I mean, we know of many DJs who didn't thrive under Jamie for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think it's their fault, but he was great. No, but here's the thing. But we thrived under him.
Totally,
But not everyone did.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
But that's the most natural thing in the world. Not everybody fits in with everybody else.
Exactly.
It really just comes down to how well your personalities mesh, how well your philosophies mesh, what your, you know, how you think people should behave at work, and what you want to get out of work.
And that your destinies intertwine in a way. I do have this bit about me where I do believe in the unexplained. I'm sure you read, people always talk about that aspect of luck. You can call it whatever you want. Luck.
I believe in luck.
Destiny. Calling. For something to reach that tipping point and to grow or explode exponentially, it's that added something. You can't actually copy it. For whatever reason, you can go out and then try to produce the exact same thing. Maybe even your product is better. I don't know. You know, something about, or you think it's better, but just doesn't catch. That bit is luck. Or destiny, or whatever you call it, and it cannot be explained. And how I think about it is, that's why it's really, really important to go with the flow and, you know, look out for these serendipitous meetings and moments, because this is where you will, to recognize the signs in your life that, hey, you know, this is an opportunity that you may want to look at, you may want to look into. It may not be what you were thinking, but give it a go.
It's so important to put yourself out in the world. And like right now I'm doing animation, and the reason I feel quite confident in what I'm doing is very early in my career I started this little movie magazine, and it failed after 4 issues. It was a total disaster.
Only 4?
Only 4. It was a complete disaster. But based on that magazine, I got hired to do another magazine, help put it together, and that one was a huge success. And then we got bought over by SPH, and then from there I ended up on the radio. But it's like, I could have either stayed at home and bitched about the writing gigs I was getting and this and that, but instead I really put myself out there to try to do something. It was shit.
Like, you did bitch a bit.
Yeah, I did bitch a bit, but the thing is, like, the product I was making was no good, but I got so much experience from doing that. Like, just even doing something very badly is very important, because it's important to just do something. If I didn't put myself out there, none of the opportunities that followed would have come about. And so I feel like it's the same thing with you. Like you say with your real estate business, you just started doing it. With your jewelry business, you just started doing it. And we're not saying it's going to be a guaranteed success every time. In fact, most of the time it's not going to be a success.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even if it's a total failure, like my first magazine, it can still lead to other things because you've shown people that you're willing to get into the arena. It's like, I'm a gladiator, I'm here to fight. I might get knocked down, I might get totally beat, but you know what? I'm going to come back stronger next time.
And here's the thing. When you're out there doing something and doing something good and being in the moment and being present and just doing your best work, you just need one person.
One person.
One person to notice your work.
Yeah.
You don't need 10.
Yeah.
You need that one person who's looking for someone just like you
Yeah.
to pluck you out of obscurity and give you that opportunity. One. Just think about it.
Yeah.
Just that one.
And that's what happened in my first magazine. The Royston found me and then had me join up with him to start the second magazine. And then when I was a writer, Maddie heard me doing an interview on the radio, and then she plucked me out of writing into radio. So probably 90% of the people listening would have been thinking, who is this moron? But Maddie, when she does do it, she's like, I like this moron.
I did.
Yes. So I feel like that's the importance of getting your voice out there. Now, you might not be in a media context or an entertainment context or anything, but in your own job, it's the same thing. You've got to be willing to put yourself out there a little bit, or to just do something. It's so important to just do something.
And take pride in it.
Yes.
And put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
You are remembered for your best work.
Yeah.
For your last best work.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was very funny because when Will Smith was really hot, this was fresh out of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then he was getting all these jobs.
Yeah.
You know, he was like the hottest,
Yeah.
one of the hottest artists in town. Do you remember? I think it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then he got the Men in Black gig, and everybody was like, Will Smith, Will Smith. And I saw this interview where he said that, you know, you can only do your best now because everybody is like, oh my God, Will Smith, like you are so popular. Everybody wants a piece of Will Smith. And he said, but I never thought about all the things to come after. Whatever that I was doing, I just did my best because you're just remembered for your last best job.
You're just remembered for your last job.
Best work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're remembered for your best work and your last work.
Yeah.
Right? In a way.
So you just have to make sure that your work is good.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And it's memorable. And to do that, you have to put your heart and soul into it. You have to take pride in it.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And for some reason, I happened to be watching that Will Smith interview, and it struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
And it has stayed with me until today. And so when I was lamenting about how I was on this radio shift that I didn't like, it wasn't a prominent shift and this and that, then I thought to myself, I changed my attitude. So that goes back to perspective. I go, you know what? I'm just going to do my best so that I am remembered for my work now.
Yeah.
This one, the one that I'm doing right now,
Yeah.
and not worry about where it's going to lead me.
Yeah.
Sure, you can make plans in your head, but let that be at the background, not the forefront.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really good advice. Whatever you're doing, I mean, I can remember when I've had summer jobs, when I was in uni and stuff like that. And I remember one of the most proud moments of my life. I worked as a dishwasher at this one restaurant, and I finished up my summer, and the manager came to me and he said, "You're the best dishwasher we've ever had."
Bravo!
I was so proud of that. And it's like, I can remember sort of making a change in my life to being quite lazy and disengaged and sort of just not particularly interested in really doing much of anything, to being like, to starting to try, you know. I went through a period of my life that was quite tough in my, as we all do, our late teens, early 20s, we're trying to find ourselves. And I was just kind of floating. And then I just sort of made a decision that, you know what, I'm going to start trying. And just that decision of starting to try, it really made a huge change in my life. And if you're going to try, you can't just try in the things that you think are cool. If you're going to be a person who tries, it sort of spills over into all the different aspects of your life. And like some people are in situations where it might not be so easy. Believe me, I was that person. I mean, I don't think it's possible to start any lower than I did in terms of where I was at in my life, you know, in terms of my mental health and all that kind of stuff, my economic situation. I mean, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find many people who were like struggling more than I was.
Yeah, in Singapore, we don't understand that. Like when you were growing up, you were dirt poor, right?
Yeah.
Like dirt poor.
For sure.
You actually worried about your next
I was
meal.
literally hungry. Like if you can imagine me, how tall I am, believe it or not, I was like at 135 pounds at one point, because I put all my energy not into spending money on food. I would buy music, cassette tapes before I would feed myself, because I thought it was very important to nourish my mind. And I got into a state where I was just like, even though it was sort of against my temperament, I got into a point where I became something of a workaholic, and I put myself through university, and I just made the decision to start trying. And once I did, things fell into place. And if you've seen my grades when I was a younger person compared to the grades I had after I made this sort of change, it was like night and day. And that's why I know, even if you're a person who gets bad grades or doesn't think of yourself as very smart, it can be turned around. You can make a change, and it's just about making the decision to change. And it's not easy, because you identify with yourself being one way, and you sort of have to transform yourself. But it is possible.
It's survival, and also
it's survival. It was survival.
Not being a victim.
Yes.
I think that's so important. Like, to take the next step, to move forward, to get to a better place, you gotta stop seeing yourself as a victim. Yeah. And the minute that you do, you have to stop yourself and go. I mean, remember there were a few times, I can't remember what it was, but it was at work, and then, I don't know, maybe we were having a fight or something, and then...
No, Maddie, no, that would never happen.
Somebody was like, oh, you poor thing, this and that. I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
I'm not a victim. Yeah. Like, stop it. Because sometimes you have to verbalize it and say it out loud. It's like, stop it.
Yeah.
You're no victim. Yeah. Stop playing into
it. Somebody seeing Maddie as a victim is quite hilarious.
or even make you out to be one.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah. There are people who will do that to try to drag you down to their level, because they see themselves as victims. Here's my advice to you. Don't see yourself as prey. See yourself as the predator. Now, you might have to be a sneaky little predator, like a little spider, or you could be a big, fearsome predator, like a tiger. You have to find your own way to be a predator. And I'm not saying go out and hurt people, even in a psychological sense. What I'm saying is take care of yourself, take care of your own business, and put yourself in a position where you can show your own prowess and strength and your ability to get shit done.
Maybe more a survivor than predator?
I've been in points of my life where I've seen myself as a predator, where I had to see myself as a predator. Yeah. Because by my temperament, I'm fairly passive. So you almost have to work yourself into a situation where it's like, no, I'm not going to take any shit from anyone. Yeah. It's very important.
It is. And you have to morph yourself and transform yourself and go with the ebb and flow of the course that you are on.
Yes.
Just to survive or get ahead. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just do it in the way that kind of gels with your sense of righteousness.
Yeah. The sense of right and wrong. Don't betray yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we've all betrayed ourselves here and there over the course of our lives. But generally speaking, you want to be able to look back on your life and think, okay, I handled myself in a reasonably okay fashion. You don't want to end up, making it and then you had to discard your entire sense of humanity along the way. I don't think that's what anybody wants either.
And not like yourself.
Yeah.
I think that you are on the right track when you look in the mirror and you go, I like myself.
Yeah.
I mean, don't love yourself too much. That's a different thing altogether. Yes. That's called narcissism.
Yes.
But you gotta like the person that you are today. And if you're not where you want to be yet, but you like who you are today, and I'm talking about not just where you are career-wise, but as a person, your relationships with your family, your friends, and it doesn't matter whether you have one friend or 10 friends, but
even if you have a pet, I feel like that can be enough for some people. If you have a really good cat or dog, you know what? You don't have to be lonely in this world. Get a cat.
Yeah, you do you. That's really important.
Yeah.
So, did I answer all your questions more or less?
Yeah, I think you answered a lot of my questions, and I think that you did a good job of it. And I hope people are able to, I hope this doesn't come off as us just sitting here talking about ourselves. We're really trying to say, we're both quite old, believe it or not, and we've both been through a lot, and we both have had a certain amount of success in our life thanks to both hard work and luck, and just trying and putting ourselves out there. And wherever you're at in your life, it's never too late to try to put yourself out there and try to make your life what you want it to be.
I think that's a good ending. Thanks for joining us on this 6-part series, The Wake Up Shot.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.